Okay, so hi everybody, and welcome to this chat with Claire Rumore, whom you might remember from episode 11 from the Sacred Feminine Power podcast, where we had a very juicy, yummy discussion about sexual shadow integration and healing the frozen child and all kinds of interesting topics around that. So it is just such a pleasure to have Claire with me again. And today we're going to be talking about a very, very special course by Shakti Shiva Academy called Soulmate Within. But before we dive into that topic, Claire, would you please just introduce yourself briefly and just mention what your background is and what your role is with Shakti Shiva?
Yeah, absolutely. And a warm hello to everyone, wherever you are tuning in from. And my name is Claire Rumore, and I am a co-director and senior faculty member at the Shakti Shiva Academy, and have been working with the Academy since about 2018 or so, and leadership since 2020, since just last year. And my background, I'm a coach, a counselor, and what I like to say I call a confidant. It's really holding a sacred, private, discreet, loving space for people to share what's weighing on them. You know, life can be really, really difficult, especially as it relates to sexuality, to intimacy, to relationships. You know, these are some of the most powerful areas of life. And I think we might all agree some of the most problematic at times, and it can be a lot to carry that weight around. So my background has prepared me to hold these roles of a coach, a counselor, a mentor, a confidant. And I studied human sexuality in university. So my degree is in that, sexuality, gender, and identity specifically. And I also studied in Latin America and in Europe as well. So got to do cross-cultural comparisons of different attitudes, which is really quite amazing that that's what life led me towards, because originally I was going to be an architect and a designer, but it led me towards that because now guiding a school with an international student body, you know, it's a really wonderful joy. So that's a little bit about me. And I also like to say I co-direct with a wonderful woman in South Africa named Rianne Vanderland. And we work together to create the coursework, to promote the coursework out into the world, to basically provide people with a safe, sheltered space to come and talk about these topics of sexuality, psychology, mysticism through a spiritual lens, through a non-dual lens specifically. So that's what we're up to.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Claire. And would you please just share a little bit more about Shakti Shiva Academy as an institution, and a little bit also about Shakti Malan herself, please?
Sure. So Shakti Malan, for those who have never heard of her or who did not encounter her, was a woman's sexuality and spiritual teacher, and also a wonderful tantrika, dakini, a teacher of tantric perspectives on life, who was based in South Africa. And she was a teacher for many, many years. And myself and Rianne had the great fortune of studying very closely with Shakti for many years and becoming some of her senior students. And so sadly, Shakti passed away in 2017, which was around the time that the Shakti Shiva Academy was just getting started. She was battling cancer and sadly transitioned very early in her life. There's so much more we would have loved to have experienced with her. Nevertheless, we're greatly fortunate to have all of her coursework, her material, and her legacy, which we are safeguarding and then continuing to evolve and give to the world through the Shakti Shiva Academy. So the Shakti Shiva Academy is the home of Shakti Malan's coursework and teachings and offerings from her many years. And then it's also the incubator of new material that's sprouting, that's growing from Shakti's original work. And we're so honored to get to continue her work in the world and to bring in and weave in wonderful teachers and thought leaders and inspirators, inspiratrices like yourself, Emmi, to come and join us in this journey.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for continuing Shakti's legacy and doing it in such a beautiful, reverent way that honors her and her life work, but then also expands on it in such a beautiful way. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I'm just dying to hear more about the Soulmate Within program. So would you please just let us know a little bit about what is Soulmate Within and what does it mean to have a soulmate within to begin with?
Absolutely. It's a beautiful course of course. And what's more significant than that is that it's based on fundamental truths of relating, which are actually the polar opposite of what we tend to be taught in mainstream culture, which is to look outside of yourself to be completed. That's what we're taught. That's the conditioning we receive, especially in Western culture, with the fairy tales and the Cinderella stories and the romanticism that we're all steeped in. But the Soulmate Within takes a different approach and says that actually there's nothing outside of you that's going to complete you. That's a false search. And all the reaching and grasping and misplaced longing that we're up to for much of our lives is actually not helpful. It's not helpful because we're looking for an external peace to be what fulfills us, to be what completes us. And as anyone knows who's been in relationships coming from that place of hoping that that person or that thing will complete me, the external is very unreliable because it's very changeable. And so if I'm placing my hope for completion and eternal happiness on something outside of myself, and that thing or that person is forever changing, because change is the really one of the only definitive things in life you can count on happening, then my own moods, my own well-being is also topsy-turvy if what's outside of me is topsy-turvy or very mutable, very changeable, very capricious. So the Soulmate Within is this notion that the relationships outside of ourselves are actually a mirror reflection of what is happening on the inside. What's happening in the relationship that's going on inside between, you know, what we might colloquially refer to as the inner masculine, the inner feminine, the inner yang or the inner yin. Those essences, those polar energetic essences, they're relating, they're interacting. They have a relationship also, whether we're aware of it or not, and whether we have any sense of the quality or the happenings of that relationship. And so through this 3-month journey of the Soulmate Within, we start systematically looking at what's going on in this relationship. Where are these two at with each other? Are they even aware of each other? That was a big thing in my early journey with this work, was my inner masculine, inner feminine were quite unaware of each other. There was an enormous age difference between them, which indicated my masculine energies were very developed and my feminine essence had been set aside or neglected, even just ignored by me for a long time, for a number of reasons that have been part of my personal journey. And then to see that demonstration of this, you know, asymmetry between them was pretty sobering. You know, it was a big wake-up call for me to see, wow, okay, well, that would explain a lot about what's happening in my external relationships, which at the time did include significant age differences between me and my partners, with me being the younger one, and, you know, asymmetries in their own way. So there was a really telling reflection between my inner relationship and my outer relationships, until and as I began to work on bringing this relationship that's inside me into more equilibrium, into more sensitivity, intimacy, awareness. I really had to bring these two parts, and still am, bring them into conversation, bring them into relationship where they're actively relating, and not from an unconscious, pain body place, you know, which can happen. We see that happen in our external relationships frequently, where we just go unconscious and we want to blame, we want to shame, we don't want to take responsibility for our own experience because it's our partner's fault. They should change, all these expectations placed on the outside. Raise your hand if you can relate to that.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty universal phenomenon until we pop awake out of the trance that we've been in due to our conditioning and also due to our internal reflexes of the pain body taking over, and the flinch that happens where we just send shame and blame out. And our partners tend to be the targets of that. So this course is it's a way to, it's a useful tool. It offers useful tools to reframe how we've been relating, so that we take back, what we've put out on others, and we bring it back here. And in doing that, we also take back the projections that we've put out on others, whether they're positive or whether they're not positive. So I start to take back the projections of, if I think my, if I think my partner's really bossy and loves, telling me what to do or scolding me when I don't, well, that's actually a projection. Whether that's happening out there or not, it actually doesn't matter, because life is coming from us, not at us. And so I'll say that again, life is coming from us, not at us. And so if my partner is bossy and demanding and entitled and this or that, whatever projections I'm putting out there, whatever judgments I'm putting out there, that's actually less about my partner and it's much more about me. But often we were doing that so unconsciously that we aren't even aware that we're sending that out and it's coming back at us, but we're blaming the mirror when we could be investigating the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really just puts the ball in your own court with everything, and just like this understanding that everything that happens in your life is your responsibility, and you are consciously or subconsciously manifesting your life every single moment of it.
Every single moment.
Yeah, and unless you really accept that responsibility at a deep level, that reflective, introspective kind of acceptance, you are going to keep projecting and you are going to be blaming and shaming and judging the other, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you'll be defaulting into what's called a victim mentality. And so one of the things that Shakti Malan taught frequently in her courses, not just in this one, is this notion of the victim, the predator or villain, the bad guy, and then the rescuer, and how this is a triangular dynamic that humans love to involve themselves in when they're unconscious, when they're asleep at the wheel and not taking that personal responsibility, like you said, Emmi. And they want to identify as the victim and then make someone else the bad person and then be rescued by a third. And then, there's this fun game that ensues that creates a lot of drama and trauma. And though there may be a thrill in that to a certain part of ourselves at a certain level for a certain, often short period of time, it actually becomes exhausting and depleting and very unfulfilling, and is likely the reason why, 1 in 2 marriages, relationships, end in divorce or end in breakup, because of this drama that can get out of control.
Yeah, for sure. Claire, what is often the underlying root cause for the victim mentality, especially? Like what kind of experiences might we have had to take on that victim role?
I think it could be absolutely different for each person. Maybe we were enabled when we were young to see ourselves as the victim, or we were often vilified. And so now we take on the victim role later, if we were inside of our family of origin, and dynamics victimized us, we may continue to identify as that, which is all understandable. However, the point is, in order to reach a certain level of maturity in life to arrive at adulthood, whether we can call it emotional adulthood or spiritual adulthood. Certainly being an adult in relationship requires taking responsibility for not specifically the thing that happened to us, but our reaction and response to it. And maybe not at the original event, because maybe we were very young. However, the ongoing reaction or response that we stick with, because that's also a conscious choice. After a point, we choose to stay with identifying as a certain thing or in a certain way. And there comes a moment where we have a choice point. We can either stay doing what we've always done or begin to take a different level of responsibility. And so I would venture to say that most people haven't reached that place yet of looking at, being willing to look at and take the responsibility for what's happening in their life, because it's painful. It's painful to have to be
scary.
so scary to look at the ways that we've been, what is the word? Just enabling ourselves. We've been complicit with our own victimhood and with our own self-abuse, self-abandonment, our own complicit with other people and their treatment of us, because that's how we're treating ourselves. So it can be a very sobering wake up that, not everyone's idea of a good time, but there comes a point when of doing that inner work and looking at those dark, shadowy places in ourselves is actually far more invigorating, exciting, fulfilling, and full of hope than staying in the mess that we've been in for much of our life.
Absolutely. And what's just coming to my mind now is that we can so relate this to what's happening globally in our world at the moment as well, and looking at the so very different responses of people to the growing restrictions and the mandates and the seeming hopelessness that there seems to be as well on a global scale, on an unprecedented level, really. So I'm just thinking that then doing a course like Soulmate Within could even help us with that, could help us really do that inner reflection and understand why we're reacting in a certain way and why we might be allowing fear to rule us, or that sense of hopelessness rule us, or perhaps anger or judgment or harshness towards others, and really start to understand as well, like, well, what could I learn from this? How could I maybe view the situation differently as well?
Absolutely. So the motto, the tagline of the Soulmate Within course is as within, so without, which is another way of saying whatever that's happening out there, that's the without part, whatever's happening out there is a reflection and would only be perceptible to me because it's happening inside me. And so that can be really hard for people to grok, to really comprehend, because it seems like, well, that's the cause and then this is the effect. And actually it's the other way around. The cause is happening in here. Life is coming from me, not at me. So the cause is happening in here, and what I see out there is the effect. And so you're exactly right, Emmi, with how the principles taught in a course like Soulmate Within, they operate at the micro level, which would be inside of interpersonal and intimate relationships. So that's the micro level. But these same principles apply to the macro level, to the global, to the human collective, because we see all of this disparity, all of this divisiveness, all of this tension. And so if we were to inquire, well, what might the inner relationship or the relationship between the inner essences of the globe be? What's that relationship as it's being reflected outside of us and in the world? Well, there's a lot of divisiveness happening at an internal place. And then again, that starts here. So it's an important time to be looking at, inquiring into, and reflecting on all the ways this internal relationship is not in harmony. That it's actually full of fighting and tension and unwillingness to view the various viewpoints and to be very rigid and stuck. And so the other piece too, when we hear the word soulmate, we might automatically think of, a romantic partner, our intimate other, our significant other. But that's just one type of soulmate. And often in our fairy tale notions, we might think that there's only one soulmate for me. You know, there's only one single soulmate in my entire life who I will ever find or interact with, or who's made for me. And I offer that that's not the case. I offer that we have many, 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 many soulmates. And these soulmates, they don't show up in our life for us to just have harmony and peace and happily ever after. That's not actually the purpose of a soulmate. That's actually a romantic fiction. And it's beautiful, but it's not realistic. It's not realistic. Because think about it. Name one person who you know who's had flawless, peaceful relating with no disagreements and no fights and no tension. Yeah, nobody. And so what it comes down to is that the soulmate is here to help us grow. And the soulmate takes many, many forms, not just a romantic partner. It can also take the form of a divisive political leader. It can also take the form of a tyrannical boss. It can take the form of a friend, a close friend who has become very emotionally needy. You know, they're all soulmates and a large respect. And so again, those relationships are a reflection of what's happening in here also. Not just our romantic relationship being a reflection of this. So the course starts to expand our awareness of what a relationship is, what it's for, and how it's here to help us grow.
Beautiful, really beautiful. And there was a question that came to mind as you were talking there, and I'm trying to remember it now. And it was around, oh yes, forgiveness. Because you are going to be diving deep with this program, and you're going to be looking at the shadow side, and you're going to be working with stuff that might, especially in the beginning, feel really, really difficult to look into. But does the Soulmate Within course prepare you for that ultimate stage where you are then actually able to forgive and not just the other, but yourself at a deep level?
Absolutely. Because as we journey through, as we peel back each layer that we're going to peel back, looking at the patterns that have shown up in our lives, looking at the projections that we've cast out onto others and the judgments that we've held and do hold, you know, as we're peeling back more layers of that and understanding why we've done that, you know, it served a purpose, but it's not effective anymore. So as we peel back more layers, we cultivate very naturally more compassion. And so as that compassion begins extending to ourselves, it begins extending to others who are here present with us, others who are from our past, others who are no longer on the planet. You know, there's compassion that begins to ripple out, and compassion is one of the key ingredients of peace, you know, peace out in the world as well as inner peace. And there is a reframe that I recently learned to forgiving, because this notion of forgiving, well, you know, I might still have some hangups still from a thing that happened in the past, and I'm not ready to forgive because that person was a jerk, and you know, I don't. To forgive feels like I'm condoning what they did. You know, that can be kind of the perception we hold about forgiving. At least I have, and I do sometimes. But a reframe that I learned recently that changed everything for me was that this word forgive and this action of forgive is not about being okay with what happened. And it's not about condoning or, you know, accepting that it happened half-heartedly, even though I still hate the person. You know, it's not actually about that. Forgiving, to forgive someone, is extending the beautiful intention, the beautiful gratitude of thank you for giving me an opportunity to learn about myself and to grow beyond my limits. So it's not about, I forgive you for cheating on me, or I forgive you for being a jerk. It's actually not that. It's, I thank you for giving me an opportunity to get to know myself at a deeper place and to grow beyond my limits. Because ultimately that's why we're here. And ultimately that's the purpose that any relationship serves.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love that reframe. And it really gives you so much more freedom to work with that concept. And yeah, just as it has a sense of expansiveness to it. Just listening to you talk about that. So that's beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Our intention is to help each of us expand beyond our patterns and our limitations up to this point, really about the limitation of how much love, compassion, acceptance, appreciation, affection, allowing that I've been willing to let in. Because we all have that threshold. So this course's aim, amongst others, is to expand, to extend out that threshold so that we become larger containers of the love. Because the container is for giving and for receiving. So when we expand the container, we're able to do both more, which is such a gift to the world.
Well, exactly. That is exactly what I was thinking of right now as well. And it sounds like every single person on this planet should be doing this course right now.
No, it makes such a difference overnight on this planet.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Claire, would you please let us know where people can find out more about the course if they're interested?
Absolutely. So you can go directly to the course page and learn all about it at www.soulmatewithin.com, SOULMATE, Soulmate Within, WITHIN. And then you can also learn more about the Shakti Shiva Academy at shaktishiva.academy. And we have other courses we offer on personal development as well as for professional development. We have 2 tracks for people, and our offerings continually extend and expand. And the focuses that we love immersing in are at the intersections of sexuality, psychology, and mysticism. So those are the conversations we're having, and we love what's happening at our school. We're so happy that you're part of our community, Emmi, and we love growing and expanding, and we welcome every one of you to join us.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And also just to mention that for those of you in the Feminine Revered community and in the Sacred Feminine Power podcast community, if you'd like to join this course, you will also be getting a special 10% discount by virtue of being members in these communities. So this is a really beautiful opportunity to learn about yourself at a really, really deep level and really start to expand that space inside you for that love and that forgiveness and that compassion that Claire was talking about. So I really encourage everybody to check out this program, this course, and if it feels aligned and if you are vibrating with that frequency at the moment, then please come and join us. It would be lovely to have you there.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, thank you, Claire, so much for your time. Appreciate your wisdom. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you. And I could listen to you for hours, but I've already gotten so much from you in relation to this program. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, beautiful. We'll see you soon, Claire. Thank you so much. Okay.
Bye.